Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Redarc Pro Liberty Trailer Brake Controller here on our 2022 Ram 1500. So if you own a Ram 1500 and you're planning on towing your camper, or maybe you have a couple of different utility trailers or an enclosed trailer, anything that's going to have brakes on it, you're going to need a way to actuate those brakes so that way you can come to a nice, safe, and complete stop and not put all of that onto the truck side. So the way to do that is to add in a trailer brake controller if you don't already have one from the factory. And when it comes to that, there are a few different options. Traditional knee knocker style, where you'd actually have a giant control box that would kind of sit below your dash and be in your way. And it's called a knee knocker just because every time you get in and out of the vehicle, you're typically going to hit your knees on it. Now, Redarc has taken it up to that next level, and they've come up with their Pro series, which this one is the Liberty, and this is going to give you just a little control knob that you keep a nice factory look on your dash, and you can hide all of the wiring and the actual controller all inside of your dash, so that way everything still looks nice and factory. Now typically when you're going to install a Pro Liberty or Elite, you're going to be looking for some sort of knockout that you can use that's blank. In our case, we had one right here, which we lucked out. Plenty of space behind there because we are going to need a few inches for the housing that sits behind here. So our little control knob can actually pop off, and you could see in the back here, let me pull that off. So here is actually just a little portion that's actually going to show. The rest of it, which is about 2.5 to 3 inches long, is just a little black plastic housing, and then there's a Ethernet port on the back of it that we plug into. Using this brake controller is super easy. I'm going to set this up to 10 so that way we can have it set at the right spot here. So it's going to be just a simple dial from 10 all the way down to 0, and anytime that you are having some sway at the back and you need to manually activate the brake controller, all you have to do is just simply press down on it. Now you're seeing it's blue right now. We have not already dialed this in. It hasn't been, or hasn't learned exactly what its position is yet because we haven't taken this off the lift. Now when you are hooked up and it has learned its position, you're going to have a green light in there as well. And then as you start to use it, so say we're hooked up to our trailer, now that light is going to go from more of a blue at the end when you're all the way at that 0, and then switch up to more of a purple as you start getting halfway, and then it'll be a full red color as you are hooking up, or as you're pressing in on it when it's at 10. Now when we're hooked up to a trailer, I'm going to be able to show you use with both the manual override and also with our brake pedal. So when we press down on our brake pedal, it's going to highlight that light on there just the same. So if you're looking at a trailer brake controller for your Ram 1500, the Liberty is probably going to be the better option for you out of the Pro series. The Elite is packed with a couple extra features, and it's going to get up to 3 axles, but that's a little bit overkill for a Ram 1500. You're probably not going to be towing a triple axle trailer with a half-ton truck. So the Liberty is probably going to be more than what you need with it going up to 2 axles, and just the ease of use here with the dial design where it's just simply 0 to 10, and it's got that light in there to kind of tell you what it's doing. If there's any issues or errors going on, that light will start blinking in different color sequences. And if we look in our manual, which I've got just down below here, there actually is a section where it just kind of talks about those sequences and then tells you, hey, if you're getting this sequence with these specific colors, then this is what the error is and what you can do to alleviate that problem. Now, as far as installation goes with this one was a super simple, easy install just because the dash came apart super easy for us. Getting below here wasn't too tough. Obviously, it's a cramped space, so if you're a bigger person and you can't really get under your dash, that would probably be the biggest factor here that would point me to maybe this isn't something I could really do, just because this is a really plug-and-play system here. So if that is the case for you, I'd reach out to our dealers using our dealer locator and just enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. Now, if you are wanting to do this yourself, then stick around and I'll walk you through the process. All right, so to start off our install, main thing here is just kind of figuring out where we want our actual manual button to live. And a lot of times that's going to be you're popping out some of the trim, kind of looking around and seeing what's going to be behind here, because that little button does take up just a tiny little bit of space, but it needs a few inches behind it for the housing that you're plugging into, and then also for the wire that's going to come off the back of it and run to the main unit. So I've kind of looked through here. There's not really any room in our dash down below that's going to be convenient to use. There's another layer of plastic behind this that's kind of preventing this from being a good spot. Otherwise, I would definitely put it right here. But I do know from a couple other installs, so we've had a 21 in here, and Scott put it right here and was able to easily just kind of pop out the whole display here. So I think that's what we're going to do. I think that's going to be the best fit and still look nice in factory, because we have all of our dials right here. So adding one more dial in this blank is, you know, going to keep it looking nice in factory still. So to start that off, we'll have to remove a couple screws up top. So you want to pull out this little cover here, and then we're going to use a Phillips head screwdriver to pop out these two screws. From that point out, we're going to be yanking on this, and we're going to have to pull it straight back. There's a bunch of little push pins that are popping it into place, and this is going to be a little tough trying to pop out, so just keep that in mind. Just like that. And then once you get that out, we've got a couple wire harnesses, so we're going to need to be careful here. I don't typically like removing harnesses unless we know exactly how or exactly what their function is, because there are instances where you don't want to remove something, especially while the battery's connected. So at this point, I'll probably just flip it upside down, and what we're going to need to get into is this top portion right here. So we're going to be taking out a couple screws. There are Torx bit screws. There's one right here, one on the other side. We'll pop those out, and that's going to allow us to get some of this cover out of the way, so that way we can get fully inside of here. We'll probably have to do some trimming to the back side of this plastic. I'm going to get that housing up in place and see exactly what we need to trim out. I don't want to take out too much. So I'm going to go get the Torx bit, and we'll get those screws popped out. All right, now I'm using a T15 Torx bit. And like you said, we're just going to take those screws out real quick. And we'll set those aside. Now the other thing right behind this center console is just down in here is where our wire harness is going to be for our tow package. So you can kind of see it, it's taped up right here with another harness. So the easiest way to get to it is really honestly just popping out this cover down here. Now there are two screws, so when you're looking at this, cover right under the steering wheel. And then with those two removed, all you got to do is just kind of pry down on it. And now there are wire harnesses in the way here. I'm going to leave those connected, but then you can easily reach up and grab that harness and get the tape off so you can pop it down. Now we're going to be plugging into that, and then we're going to have that harness run over to our main unit, which I'm going to tie up somewhere inside of here. I haven't totally decided that yet. I'm going to have to really kind of get in there and look at what's going to be a good space to actually mount it so that it's not going to be moving around and it's not going to be in our way. All right, so I've cut that tape that was around there. There's 4 different connectors here. And the one we're looking for is this guy right here. It's got 4 pins in it, and that's going to match right up with the 4 pins on our wire harness side here. So at this point, I am going to disconnect the harness for these switches here, because we're going to be popping this whole switch section out. Now there's a couple push like tabs here that we got to pry on while we're doing that, and there's one right here, and then 2 more up top here and here. So you gotta, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. We'll probably just overview this at this point. I'm going to have to sit here, kind of pinch it out enough while prying up on those to get it just past that lip on there, and then also keep pressure so that we can come down here and do the same thing, because like see, it just popped right back in on the top there. So at this point I might grab like a couple of pry tools, little trim panel tools, and then you can push in on it and have those kind of sit there and help you, since I don't have 4 hands here. There we go, we can pop that on out. And now we have our little section we want to pop into, and there is some plastic in there, so I'll probably take a burr tool or my multi-tool and just kind of cut that little support beam out. That way we can have our switch live inside of there. Alright, so I've taken the little dial that sits behind our knob, and I held that up on here. Got it how I wanted it. And then I just use that as my guide. So I colored in that little hole. That's where our little light is going to be poking through that lights up your dial. and then I also circled the inside there and then just drew lines across to get the center. So at this point now I can use my center punch. I'm going to make a little divot in there, that way my drill bit doesn't walk on me. So I'm going to get that lined up. For the light, we're going to be using an 1/8 inch drill bit. And then for the actual knob, we're going to be using a 3/8 drill bit. At this point, any little burrs you have, I would probably come in with just a razor blade and kind of clean that up. Now at this point, now that we have it cleared out a little bit better, we can test fit our knob. Get that lined up. There we go. Got our light sticking out, we've got our knob in there. We can throw on our little trim ring. Now I may have to trim out a little bit more on that just because it is a little bit wider. Yeah. So you don't have to use the trim ring. You can if you want. Honestly, in this case, it probably is going to look a little bit worse if we did, just because it's not really matching the all black layout here. So we can just go without it, throw that on. And I'm just going to tighten this down by hand, and I'll get a socket in just a sec and finish it off. We got to be real careful. We want to get this nice and tight, but we don't want it so tight to where we can't push that manual override anymore. All right, I'm using a 12mm socket, and I'm just snugging it down by hand with that socket. Once we have that ready, so I'm going to turn this all the way to the right, and that's going to line us up with our 10. If you turn it all the way to the left, you would want to line up with 0, and we're just trying to get that right over that light. So it might not be exactly perfect, but as long as you're pretty close to it, that'll give you a good gauge. So as I start to turn it left, we're going to go down to 0. As I turn it to the right, we're going all the way up, adding that gain higher and higher. All right, so I popped this back in, literally 0 force at all. You just pop it in, those tabs immediately grab onto it. The thing I want to know now is whether or not I can use the right angle or if I have to go with just the standard plug here. And it's looking like I'm going to have to go with the standard just because there is all this plastic in the way. So let's get this plugged in. And this is the communication cable that's going to run over to our main unit. So that way when we're changing that gain or pressing the manual override, it's going to know to activate. So at this point now we can kind of flip this back over, get it back in place, and then reinstall those screws that we removed, and then we can get down under our dash and start hooking up our main control unit, mounting it in place, and then getting everything kind of pushed back together here. So I'm going to flip this around, but I'm also going to shove our wiring down in here. So you want to make sure that you're not going to stick this in a spot where you won't be able to pass it through. So it looks like if my switch is going to live right here. Now there's plastic at the back blocking me, but there's a little opening right here behind the shifter that goes straight down and kind of leads into that area. So that's where I'm going to tuck my wiring into. All right, now before you flip this back, make sure that you plug in any of those wire harnesses that you previously removed, and then also reinstall those Torx bit screws. Oh, actually, I'm a little tangled up. I'm going to fix this real quick, and then we can pop it back in. And also don't forget those 2 top screws. All right, so at this point I've already installed the unit and hooked it up. It's just too tight of a space for us to both be in here, so we're just going to kind of give you the gist of how I got this installed. So if you look over, there's a support beam that runs straight up, and there's 2 tabs on it, and you can see on this farther side I ran a bolt through there and then also through a lock nut on the back, and that's really going to help clamp this down on here and prevent any kind of movement. So as you can see, I'm pressing on here, we're not really getting much play out of it. But I've also ran some zip ties through. So I went through the mounting brackets on our unit, and then also that other square hole over here, and then on the top one I just kind of wrapped it around that whole support column that's running up. And then from there, we've got our harness, which I have plugged in on our controller, and then on the harness up top, I've also zip tied that up all out of the way, so that way it's not hanging down. We don't have to worry about anything getting caught on anything. And then with our wire harness running over to our actual button that we use to control it, I've got that just plugged in. I'm not a huge fan of how low this sits, but once the cover is back on here for our dash, it sits just above that. So it's not like it's something where you would really kick it or have any issues unless you're like really throwing your foot around. But I couldn't really find another great spot to really make sure that this was secured, because the big thing here is making sure that it can't move, because once it learns its position, that's how it's going to activate the brake controller or send back that signal back to our trailer, because this is looking for inertia and then changes in it. So as it starts to decrease in speed, it's going to kick that inertia sensor in. Now if it's moving around and shaking or something like that, then that inertia sensor is not going to get a good reading of what's going on, and it's not going to send back the proper voltage. All right, so I'm going to do a quick test before we actually go out and use this with a trailer, but we've got our meter, which is going to simulate a trailer, and I'm going to just press the manual override, and you can see we're getting current back, so we know our brake controller is functioning properly. So right now we're driving over to hook up to a trailer with some brakes so that we can actually have this learn its position. Now on some models it'll automatically do it, like as soon as you get in it'll start blinking and learning its position on its own without even hooking up to a trailer. On this one, since we are tying into the factory tow package, this is a situation where with nothing being plugged into the 7-way, it doesn't sense that there's a trailer there, and it's not sending power for the brake controller. So once we hook up, you will see this light come on, it'll start blinking, and then that's where we're going to go through the whole drive around for a little bit, hit the brakes a couple times, and it'll learn its position. All right, we're all hooked up. We got our 7-way on, our safety chains, we've got our coupler locked. We are all good to take off here. Let's get in and let's get some test driving going. All right, so now that we're hooked up, we have power running to our brake controller. You can see it's blinking, and that's just telling us it's trying to learn its position. But like I said, we do need to drive around first, so let's buckle our seatbelt. You can see when I was pressing on the brake, you can already see it's starting to do red there. So like if I press that, you can see it's turning like that purple up into red once we get down there to the higher gain. When we're low, it's still blue. So let's drive around. We're going to want to get up to about 20, 25 miles per hour and then press on the brakes. I'm going to get a little bit further up so I'm not by all these cars here, just so we have some more open space. And we can kind of play around a little bit more. When you do it, you want to come to kind of a full stop and take back off. Brake again. And it looks like since it's not blinking anymore already, we are already calibrated, so we are good to go here. So at this point now, I'm going to swing back up to this straightaway, and then we can use this. And I'm going to be at like 15 miles per hour at this point, and I'm going to try to have the trailer stop me. So this is where you're trying to figure out kind of what gain you need to be at. So I like to start around the middle, but lately the gain has been a little bit much on that just because the trailers we're using are typically empty. So I'm going to go around like 3 or 4. Get up there, and then not feeling anything. Let's go a little bit higher. There we go. I'm feeling it at like 5.5 there. It might be a little bit more in this enclosed trailer than what I was expecting. Go up a bit more. And that's pushing us. I got my foot completely away, and it's pulling us to a stop just with our trailer brakes. So we know our brakes are functioning. We're calibrated. At this point, pretty much ready to go. That's about it for the install portion of this brake controller. Well, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Redarc Tow Pro Liberty Trailer Brake Controller here on our 2022 Ram 1500. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right trailer brake controller for your Ram 1500, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.